Hey, honey,
Yes, Barry?
let's get out of here.
Where are we going?
Where do we always go?
Este ritmo de palmas, sin naturaleza, hasta encontrar la playa. Por eso grito al mundo, yo soy de Puerto Vallarta. Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta.
Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travelers. I'm your host, Barry Kessler, and I'm just so happy to be introducing you to my favorite vacation destination, and maybe it's even yours. That's Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, of course. That music you're listening to is performed by Alberto Perez, and Alberto is the owner of the Lapa Lapa group of restaurants here. Those are the Lapa Lapa, Puerto Vallarta's oldest restaurant on the famous Los Muertos Beach, and the El Dorado Restaurant and Beach Club right next door. So you can enjoy that fantastic view of the Los Muertos Pier, all lit up at night in beautiful colors, or during the day in its grand splendor. For breakfast, lunch, or dinner, seated with your toes in the sand right at the water's edge. It's so romantic. It's so Puerto Vallarta, my friends. This week, I'm going to introduce you to a very interesting guy. His name is Kevin Simpson. Kevin and his wife, Beatriz, are the owners of Colectika Gallery, as well as Peyote People. That's a Mexican folk art gallery. They have a new location as well over at the Loft Condominiums at the Romantic Zone. And Kevin sells Huichol art. I call Kevin the Huichol Whisperer. He's going to take us into the magical world of the Huichols, or the Wixitari indigenous peoples of Mexico. But before we get to Kevin, let's see what's happening in Puerto Vallarta the 30th of November, 2019. Beginning tomorrow, the 12-day celebrations and pilgrimage to the Iglesia de Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe here in Puerto Vallarta begins. Over 360 processions throughout the 12-day period. All the action takes place around the church, of course. And I think I remember Jimmy Pluff telling us that they actually stage around Woolworths downtown. And, of course, all the local organizations, the church groups, the city and municipal groups, neighborhood and colonia organizations and groups, they all have a chance to participate in these processions. And you can actually get a schedule over at the tourist office, over at the municipal square, I believe. And it is located on the corner, on the southeast corner of the municipal building there, right there in downtown. They say that 180,000 people will be participating in the events over that 12-day period. The Christmas tree was lit up last night. They had a big ceremony over on the Malecon, and the Malecon is all decked out right now, ready for the holiday season. Very colorful lights. It's a very colorful time, and a great time to be in Puerto Vallarta, that is for sure. Now, keep in mind, with the holidays coming up, all of the farmers markets, the craft markets all around the bay are now open. They're all in full swing. Those would be the Saturday Olas Altas Farmers Market. They are there from 9 until 2. And Saturday also has the market over on the Quale Island, the Bazart. They are running from 2 until 6. In the morning also on Saturday, 3. There's 3 markets going on Saturday, probably more. The Three Hens and a Rooster Market over at the Lions Club. They are open from 9 o'clock until 1 o'clock. So that's Saturday. Sunday, there is the La Cruz de Guanajuaxtla Market. And up in La Cruz, they are running from 9 until 2. On Monday, over at Flamingos Farmers Market at La Mega in Bucerias, They are open from 9 until 5. Tuesday, the Riviera Farmers Market in Nuevo Vallarta. They run from 9 o'clock until 2 o'clock. Wednesday, the Forever Spring Farmers Market in Bucerias. They run from 9 until 2. Thursday, don't forget the Marina Vallarta Market that's happening over there. That is the evening market from 6 o'clock until 10. And then Friday is the Marsol Market over at the Hotel Marsol, right next to Cuatecicuetas. And they roll from 9 o'clock until 1 o'clock. So there are plenty of options to shop, lots of eating. These farmers markets, they have all these great items. They have, gifts. They have dresses and clothing and jewelry and potions and all kinds of food and prepared foods and canned foods and packaged foods, coffee, you name it. Of course, we have our friend Gabino. He's always at these markets too. So make sure that, if you need to shop, get on out and do some of that kind of shopping. And speaking of shopping, by the way, the Rio Quale Market just turned 80 years old. Let me read from Puerto Vallarta News Daily. It goes this is translated, so be careful. Here we go. The Quale River Municipal Market will be celebrating its 80th anniversary on November 27th for the foundation of the market and the 40th anniversary of the construction of its current building. So tenants and municipal authorities invite everyone to be part of a series of activities that have been prepared for the occasion. So this all happened on the 27th of November, so you missed it. Lucia Alcarez shared part of the history of this municipal market, which began with the famous Polores that in 1939 were grouped in front of the main square to sell chicken, toast, pozole, coffee, tamales, and atole. And then they were located in the Casco Viejo, was known as, and in the space that is currently occupied by the market, where the building would later be constructed, which was inaugurated November 27, 1979, by then President Municipal Eugenio Torres and Governor Flavio Romero de Velasco. She indicated that over time the market was changing. They went from the sale of fish and fruits and meats and vegetables to handicrafts. And that today is distinguished among the visitors who are looking for a souvenir, in addition to 8 dining areas. The director of municipal tourism, Ramon Gonzalez Lomeli, thanked the city for carrying out the activities that strengthen the arrival of visitors to the marketing, including the recently remodeled bathroom facilities, and analyzing options to create content for visitors such as musical presentations or dances. He explained that work is also being carried out on the signage that will be installed on Guerrero Street so that people on Miramar Street can easily reach the market, and approach is also maintained with tourist guides and companies to carry out tours to the market, among other actions that allow reviving the activity of this important space. And I have a link to that article in the VallartaDaily.com. Check it out. They're in the show notes. Imagine that, though. 80-year-old mall. Wow. Anyway, I remember that many of our Mexican interviewees that we have interviewed have pointed out that their favorite places to eat are right there on the top floor of the municipal mercado. So if you haven't been up there for breakfast or lunch or even dinner, an early dinner, they close kind of early, you're missing out. I got to tell you, I've been up there, and it's an experience to eat con la gente, with the people. And now, talking about, we're just keeping with this particular theme of shopping. The South Side Shuffle is back. Let me read from Banderas News. Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, on Friday, November 29th, 2019, and every other Friday, from 6 o'clock until 10 p.m. through April of 2020, the Zona Romantica will come to life as locals and tourists alike head over to Basilio Badillo and do Southside Shuffle, the only ongoing party of its kind in Puerto Vallarta. Filled with art galleries, shops, and boutiques that offer everything from fine art and Mexican pottery to folk art, jewelry, and resort wear, Basilio Badillo has been known as one of the best shopping areas in Vallarta for almost 30 years. And now it's in its 10th year, the Southside Shuffle transforms the always bustling street into a sensory delight. Every other Friday, from 6 until 10, you'll find friends, neighbors, and musicians while wandering up and down Basilio Badillo and stopping in to visit those participating businesses that offer refreshments and festive shopping environment. Although there are many galleries along the road, it's not an art walk. Nevertheless, participating galleries like Galeria Dante, the largest and most eclectic art gallery in Puerto Vallarta, will be showcasing works by a variety of artists throughout this season. Along the way, you can stop for a bite to eat, a cocktail, and conversation, or to dance in the street to live music performed by some of the best musicians in the Banderas Bay area. What is more, it's safe to walk in the romantic zone at night, which means locals and visitors are at ease while they're enjoying the only ongoing party of its kind in all of Puerto Vallarta. The fiesta hits the street every other Friday, once again, from 6 until 10 p.m., so come on out, enjoy cocktails, live music, and shuffling between participating businesses on Vallarta's best shopping street, Basilio Badillo. In addition to the businesses that participate in the Southside Shuffle, there are many other wonderful shops, restaurants, and galleries in the vicinity that are not to be missed while you're out doing the Southside Shuffle. And like I said, I have a silly little link in the show notes to that particular article from the Banderas News. The Bahia World Music Festival is coming to Puerto Vallarta on December 7th and December 8th. It will be at Oscar's Restaurant over on Quale Island, and it will feature music from Mexico, South America, Europe, and the Middle East. There will be lawn seating right there. They're going to have tacos. There will also be that great menu over at Oscar's. So if you're in town, just stop on by. Whenever you hear that music, don't be afraid. Walk to the bridge, walk over the Rio Quale there, and then walk down that wide staircase down to Oscar's. Entry is free. The food will cost you, of course. But my guess is that most of you have never eaten at Oscar's. And now's your chance. People think it's expensive because it's always empty, but let me tell you, it's a reasonable place to eat. I have no idea when the music starts because it doesn't say here in the article, but, it's Puerto Vallarta. It's probably not too early. I'm going to make a stab at it, take a wild guess. I'm going to say it's going to start around 1 or 2. That's going to be Saturday and Sunday, December the 7th and 8th, over at Oscar's. Listen for the music. Or go down there and ask them over at Oscar's. Maybe they'll tell you. Maybe they know. I purchased my plane tickets, and I reserved the first 4 nights in Puerto Vallarta over at an Airbnb. And, coming back to Paradise on January the 6th for 10 days. I'll be recording interviews and doing some exploring north and south of Puerto Vallarta. And, of course, right in the middle, right in my favorite place in the whole wide world, Puerto Vallarta. I'm going to be making announcements in a couple of weeks about the meet and greets, but keep that Tuesday, the 7th of January open for a meet and greet over at Kelly's Por Favor Saloon and Cook House. That'll be from 5:30 until 7:30. And I'm going to have one other one. It's going to be at a bar. I don't know where, but stay tuned. We'll be talking about that pretty soon. Now I'm going to be flying down on Alaska Airlines. Figure I'll tell you the prices and stuff. It's a pretty cheap rate, and $292 round trip. nonstop from Los Angeles. They picked the seat for me. I board dead last, but I really don't care, just as long as they take me to Puerto Vallarta. I will have to pay for one checked bag going down and back. I'm going to be packing my inflatable queen-size mattress again. It worked so good last time. I really, really liked it. I appreciated it. And as long as nobody's sleeping with me, I can sleep on one of those inflatable mattresses. If somebody else sleeps with me, forget it. They turn around, they roll, I roll. It's bad. It's not good. Anyway, in that same bag, I actually stuffed some ladies' clothing in there again. I hope they don't open it up and look at me funny. This time I got some clothing from another house that I just closed escrow on last week. And this lady had the nicest clothes in her closet. She doesn't need it anymore. Now, she's not dead, okay? She just moved on to a retirement home, and she doesn't need all those nice clothes anymore. So she was actually thrilled to know that they were going to be coming down to Mexico for me to donate them. So I got a bag packed. I'm almost ready to go. As far as the Airbnb that I'm going to be staying at, it is high season, so pickings are a little slim. Normally if I'm down here in May, I'm down here in October. I can pick from a whole lot of different options, and they are a lot cheaper than they are right now during the high season. My first 4 nights, I will be staying over at Malecon 1 again. Not the same apartment I had last time, so I'll see if the internet is still an issue or not here, because I did have issues, like I told you, back in October. But anyway, I'm going to be doing some hunting around for some interesting new places, maybe a couple Mexican hotels while I'm down there, and we'll just see how that all works out for the final days of my stay. Anyway, the B&B I'm staying in right now is $49 a night, and so that's not bad. Now, last week I mentioned my newest obsession. My newest obsession is Mexican candy, and I talked about how I needed to do some more kitchen testing and some more taste testing and a little more research. And well, I'm still doing all that research. I got a little sidetracked due to Thanksgiving. I had to cook, and I'm still doing the dishes. And so anyway, my treatise on Mexican candy will need to wait 1 more week. I don't know how much more my pancreas can take, but as always, as I say, I'm doing this for you guys. Right now, let's get to our guest, shall we? One of our first interviews I did almost 3 years ago was a walk on the Malecon. I did that Malecon sculpture tour with Gary Thompson. And it's one of those episodes that when I think back on it, I wince, because it was one of my first ones, and I was just getting my bearings. I was learning some of the tricks of the trade of doing live recording. And it was on this particular day, the waves were loud, and I was pointing my recorder at Gary, and I was pointing it towards the waves, and it really did a number on the recording, all these crashing waves. It really distorted the audio. So anyway, it was a learning experience for me, for sure. And why am I mentioning that? I'm mentioning that because our guest was actually on that podcast that I did with Gary Thompson, although he didn't know it. And his name is Kevin Simpson. Kevin is from Peyote people. He was part of the tour, and he still is, by the way. He still walks along with Gary. He explains the symbols that are embedded into the Malecon, embedded with this river rock. And this river rock creates these designs that represent different local tribes like the Huichols. And Kevin explains their meanings as Gary walks along the Malecon, going from sculpture to sculpture. Now, a little history for you as far as the evolution of Kevin's place, of Kevin's businesses. In 1997, Kevin and his wife, Beatriz, opened a very small shop over on Lazaro Cardenas, where they sold decorative items. And as Kevin tells it, he says that they went to Tonala and they purchased candles, tin stars, and other decorative items. And after spending all of their savings, their little store was still pretty barren. So Beatriz said that he should put some of the beaded masks that he had collected from Huichols in the store in order to fill up some wall space. It wasn't long after that Huichols started showing up and asking if he was interested in more work. And then one day, a young Huichol showed up with a really beautiful mask. And when he asked about the price, it was about twice as expensive as any of the other masks that he had purchased in the past. And when he asked this Huichol why it was such an exorbitant price, he explained to him that there were extra details, including more complex color combinations. And, well, after listening to all of that, he agreed and started offering artists more money, but insisted that they use more complex designs in their work. And then in the spring of 2001, a location became available downtown, and after much debate, he and Beatriz decided to move the store, and by this time they had expanded their inventory, and they were working with tribes from Chihuahua to Chiapas, and that home decor that they had started off with had pretty much been phased out, and it was time for a new name for their store. So he had just returned from celebrating Easter with the Huichols, and so Peyote was definitely on his mind, but he says that they wanted something that was more inclusive of the other tribes that they work with, like the Yaqui and the Tarahumara and the Cora Indians. All of these different tribes use peyote in their rituals, so the name Peyote people seemed to fit. So over the next 10 years, as the folk art in Mexico underwent enormous change, primitive pieces transformed into complex creations that rivaled modern or even contemporary art. So they thought that it was time to begin showcasing another level of folk art that is known as the Grand Masters, after the Banamex Foundation Grand Masters of Mexican Folk Art, and therefore Colectika was born, their gallery Colectika. Now, with all the development in the south side of town, they also felt that it was time to go back to their roots, and they opened another Peyote people in the Zona Romantica in order to showcase quality folk art and, to choose a new location over in the condominiums, over at the Loft, over on Lazaro Cardenas. So those are their three locations. Each is a little different, but each one has beautiful pieces, all different price ranges. So now that I've set the table, so to speak, let's go right now and let's find out more about Kevin and his beautiful galleries and the Wixatari, or as they're better known, the Huichols. Let's go to the corner of Calle Allende and Guadalupe Sanchez in downtown Puerto Vallarta, and let's meet the man himself, Kevin Simpson of Gallery Colectika, the Huichol Whisperer. Kevin, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much, Barry.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, and what was your path that led you to Puerto Vallarta?
I grew up in Toronto, Canada, and went to university there. And when I graduated from university is when NAFTA was first signed back in 94. So February of 95, me and a couple of friends from university drove around the U.S. and ended up here in Mexico because we thought with our newly printed university degrees we could change the world. And
yeah,
we were very excited and thought about the great possibilities that this I guess you could call, third world country at the time. New opportunities, let's say, for environmental protection, maybe recycling, things like that. We thought we could implement here that they hadn't done before.
Interesting. All right. And how'd that all work out for you?
I remember showing my resume to someone who said that they couldn't read or write, but it didn't mean that they'd hire me anyways.
There you have it. All right. Note taken, everybody. But you do environmental support many environmental causes, I'm sure.
Absolutely. No, it still is the one of the things that we try to follow is how to stay in touch with the earth.
So when did you decide to move here?
I guess I was just here and just decided to stay. I fell in love with the people. The people were just incredible. I mean, they would give you things off the beach. You didn't even know them. I lived in Mismaloya for a time in La Jolla there, and the fishermen would come in. And so they'd provide the fish, we provided the kitchen, and we all ate. And it was that kind of community I think that I enjoyed the most.
Yeah, wow. So when was that? What year was that?
This was like 95, 96.
Okay. How'd you end up, what kind of other things did you do here?
One of the actual first jobs I had here was an extra in a movie. I believe the movie was called Solo, Mario Van Peebles. But I had become friends with one of the actors they brought down, and it's kind of interesting because years later, we were watching the Academy Awards, and this guy wins the Academy Award for Best Actor. And I looked at my wife and said, hey, I know that guy. She laughs. And, how do you know him? I looked and looked and looked, and I found black and white pictures of me and Adrian Brody on the beach of Mismaloya.
Surprise!
Yeah, should have stayed in touch with that guy.
Yeah, evidently. I tell you. All right, so you were an extra, but that doesn't make you a whole lot of money. What else were you doing?
I got a stint in the wonderful world of timeshare.
Okay.
And, I have to say that for all they say about it, it was better than 4 years of university in terms of real life experience.
Uh-huh. I bet. How'd you end up with the Huichols?
It kind of evolved. The first experience I had with the Huichol, believe it or not, was Christmas Day 1997. No, it was 97 or 96. My son was 3 months old at the time. And so he was born in October 96, so it was Christmas Day 96. And I had hidden my Christmas presents at another person's house so my wife wouldn't get into them. And so I was walking down the street to go get them. And, he was on my shoulders, and there he was. There was a Huichol sitting on the corner. So I went and talked to the guy and said, who are you and what are you doing here? And he says, my name's Juan, and my brother-in-law said you could come here and sell pieces. I was like, great. You do know that nothing's open today. Today's Christmas. He kind of scratched his head, and he looked at me and goes, what's Christmas? I was like, no way. You cannot be real. And so I, told him to wait there, went, grabbed my stuff, came back, and brought him home and cooked him breakfast to the chagrin of my wife. She said, what are you doing bringing this person home? And he had like 5-6 masks. We bought them all from him, loved them, sent him on his way, and told him to come back next month, which I don't think he showed up for another 3 years. But in the meantime, someone had mentioned that, my wife working for someone wouldn't really make ends meet. So if you opened your own store, it would be a little bit more of a entrepreneurship. So we opened a little shop on Lázaro Cárdenas and didn't really have much money to decorate it. So my wife's suggestion was, hey, put those damn masks in there and fill up the wall space. Between that and photos of our honeymoon in Palenque, that's kind of how we started.
Okay. All right. And so tell us a little bit about the Huichols that are around here.
After meeting the first guy on that fateful Christmas day, I was sitting in front of our little shop one afternoon, and this guy came off the bus. And he was obviously wearing Huichol garb, but it wasn't embroidered garb. It wasn't bright. It wasn't shiny. It was a very simple suit. But this guy had a bow and arrow. Like a deerskin quiver and like a 3-foot bow. And I was like, damn, this is 1997, and this guy's carrying around a bow and arrow. So I chased him down the road. And I said, I don't know you and you don't know me, but I'm going to buy a roasted chicken and a six-pack because it looks like you've got a story to tell. As long as you keep telling stories, we'll keep feeding you. And so I, again, brought him back to my apartment, and my wife was, again, wondering what the heck I was doing. And his name was Jacinto Lopez. And it turns out he was one of the most photographed shaman from back in the late 60s, early 70s. He was governor in 67 and was one of the biggest influences in the creation of the bead art itself. Most of the Huichol who live around this area now are descendant of him or others in around San Andres Cuamiata. And for me, he was the one who really showed me the way.
Wow. And so where do they live?
It was funny because he had always come and stayed over at my apartment, and then one day he's like, "Hey, you want to go to my house?"
And you're going, oh, nah, it's okay.
Oh no, I'm sure I'm going there. I don't think I realized what it entailed, however, because we had to take the bus from here to Ixtlan del Rio, and then we slept on the dirt floor of an airport hangar. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, they woke us up, put us on a weight scale, and then after getting our stuff into this little, I think it was a 5-seater, we took off up into the mountains. From Ixtlan del Rio is about an hour flight to San Andres Cuamiata. It's a tabletop at about probably close to 6,000 feet. And the plane just a mail drop. So the plane drops you there, turns around, and leaves. So as the plane took off, I turned around, and there's 400 Huichol going, "Hey, who are you, and what do you want?"
That's right, Whitey. What are you doing here?
Basically, I looked at the old man and said, "Hey, I'm with him. He brought me."
Right.
It wasn't. It was actually just about a year ago. I mean, we're talking 15, 20 years ago now. It was last year, I think, that Jacinto's son told me a story that they were going to throw me in jail that time. But he was able to talk them out of it.
Really?
Wow.
Wow.
And I had no idea.
You pulling your leg?
At that time, there were pretty strict rules about signing in and what you were supposed to do when you arrived.
Really? Wow. So it's that kind of a secret society up there, isn't it?
There was an incident last year, I believe, where one of the communities actually kicked 50 families out for being Jehovah's Witness.
Wow.
They still believe that they have the right to police their people in that way.
Interesting. I guess that kind of, if you turn Jehovah's Witness, it kind of puts a little kibosh on the peyote.
It definitely makes celebrating the agrarian cycle a new way.
Let's talk about the agrarian cycle, because everybody, I mean, I never talk about this kind of stuff on my show. But tell me about the what they do and what is the ceremony that involves the use of peyote?
Peyote is something that they use actually to help them communicate with their gods. It's sort of like I would like to call the satellite dish. And it's through that they communicate with them. And people ask all the time what it's like. And I said, well, if you ever eaten mushrooms, you might giggle a lot. If one was to eat enough LSD, you can talk to God. And then we say, peyote, if you take that, well, God talks back to you. This is an exciting time of year because this, in the fall, is their harvest ceremony. So it's the conclusion of the agrarian calendar. This is the time when they're going to thank the gods for the successful harvest of beans, corn, and squash by beating a drum. The music, they believe, goes up and thanks the gods for bringing the wind. The wind is what brings the clouds is what brings the rain falls, your corn grows, and the cycle continues. Before a ceremony like this, one would have to go on the deer hunt. And with the fresh deer meat, you'll make a broth, and you will participate with everyone in the tribe with that. Because the deer is one of their gods that they consider that it thanklessly gives its life for them to live on. Any family could shoot a bird or a squirrel and survive, but if you were to land a deer, that would start a whole potluck where everyone would bring something and the whole community would participate. The main ceremony that involves the peyote is actually the opposite end of that, which is the rain ceremony. The Hicorinierra ceremony, which takes place in the springtime just after Easter, is when they're actually praying to the gods to make it rain so they can start planting their corn. And of course, before that is Easter when they start preparing the fields. That would also involve a little bit of peyote. They generally go in March before Easter to go and get the peyote, and that's probably the most sacred of all their pilgrimages to Wirikuta, which is the land just outside Orel de Catorce, where the peyote grows naturally. It's interesting because peyote really only comes from that area. It's been transplanted by the Yaqui and Tarahumara up in northern Mexico, but it actually grows only naturally in the high plains of San Luis Potosí.
This plateau, this mesa that they're on, what's that like? What's that area like?
It's like a weird frontier trading post. We believe that they lived in the canyons by the rivers before, but with the government creating an airstrip up there and building schools up there, and now there's stores, they've all sort of emigrated there. It's funny because most of the kids are boarded at school. Monday to Thursday, Friday night, they'll go back on their own family ranches. It's just a collective community, which is rare. One of the things we like to say about the Huichol was nobody touched them until 1722, and that's when the Franciscan missionaries actually got up there. So they had almost 200 years of autonomy. The interesting thing about them, however, was the simple fact that the bead stuck and the missionary didn't. The missionaries physically abandoned the Huichol by 1800 because of their scattered settlement patterns. The government has probably had more success in the last 50 years of encouraging them to live in communities rather than small, scattered family homesteads, just because of the school, stores, things like that.
Right. How are they? I mean, how do they get along? Are they self-sufficient?
The guys in the mountains are extraordinarily self-sufficient. They pretty much grow enough corn, bean, and squash to survive. The art was really only supposed to be something to supplement their income during the dry season. Unfortunately, what we've seen over the years is so many people have left their homesteads up in the Sierra and moved to the city, and now the bead art has become a 9 to 5, Monday to Sunday production, which kind of distracts from the idea of just supplementing their income, unfortunately.
Right, but it's needed, right?
It is. Absolutely. And I don't want to distract from anyone because they have the right to do it, except the elders in the old days used to tell us, if you don't hunt deer, you have no right to use it in your art. There is something we would like to draw an invisible line that has nothing to do with aesthetics. Rather, it's something we call cultural authenticity. I want to be able to show through photos and documents that these are the guys that are actually participating in the ceremonies and rituals that make up what it means to be Huichol. So not only is it someone of Huichol descent making the art to make a buck, but it's also someone who uses that money to maintain their traditions and customs.
Got it. Tell us what kinds of things they produce.
Things have changed and evolved considerably over the years. There was a time when they were more particular about what they would do, but nowadays our saying is this, as long as your mother-in-law stands still long enough, they'll beat her.
Hey, he said bead, not beat. And, he did mention mother-in-law. I just had to say that. So.
That's why we're covering her with beads. I like the more traditional things, like deer, masks, things that they would see in their ceremonies and rituals. We even have a small section that I consider a little bit more anthropological, i.e. what they would actually use in ceremony. But nowadays, if you look around the stores, you can pretty much name the animal, and they'll do it. One of the things I've always liked to say is new cellular technology, infrastructure is allowing them to see things that they had never seen before. It was just a year, maybe 2 years ago, one of our better artists, Santos Bautista, came in, and he was very excited. He said, I've got the greatest piece. You're going to love this. And he pulls out this, carving of what obviously looks like a horse, and it's gray and black. And I'm like, super, what's this? He's like, look, it's a black and white horse. Isn't it amazing? I just saw one on a television. I'm scratching my head and like it just dawns on me, the guy just saw a zebra. and yeah, so things are changing. They'll beat anything nowadays. Although it was 2 years ago, we probably undertook the most exciting project I've ever been involved in, together with a Dutch artist, Vincent Mock. What happened was the Huichol shaman have not been able to get visas to go stateside, so they've all been doing peyote ceremonies in Europe. And I guess they stumbled upon this group in Holland and did this peyote ceremony, and this guy had this vision of a deer chasing him. So he started sending us deer antlers. The Dutch red deer has a rack that's probably about 3.5 feet long, so they're very large. And then the next year, the shaman went back and, in my humble opinion, did way too much peyote with these guys because they got this idea of doing the largest deer ever. So Vincent Mock and his crew set out to find what they called a megalosaurus, which is commonly called an Irish elk. The particular specimen that they found was found in a quarry in Germany, and they bought it from a paleontologist in France. And these guys actually put it in a box and shipped it to us. And so we beaded this 20,000-year-old fossil of a prehistoric deer.
Okay. All right. Talk about transformation. That must have been pretty incredible.
We actually...
How long did that take?
It took us almost 6 months. And we actually coined the phrase that we were bringing it back to life. It was actually a fantastic project. We're very excited to be involved in because Vincent's whole thing is protecting Wirikuta, the sacred land where the peyote grows. Unfortunately, it's being threatened by a Canadian mining company. And so we just want to educate people about how natural biospheres are more important than silver and gold sometimes.
The base of these beaded animals, what is that? It's carved wood, or what is it?
Usually it's carved wood. Today they're starting to move to new things like fiberglass, but I still like wood because it's a natural product, although they don't carve as much as they used to. We found today that there are better carvers in Oaxaca, Mexico. And so because we work with them who create the tonos and nahuales, better known as alebrijes, we'll get so many painted by them and then so many blank ones that the Huichol themselves can bead over.
Excellent. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought they did.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Let's talk about what would a traditional Huichol meal look like?
The traditional Huichol meal would definitely consist of corn. Corn is the basis of everything. You could eat corn just off the cob, or they would grind it down into the traditional dough, using a metate, of course, and make those tortillas. But, of course, they're the blue tortillas because of the color of the corn, so they'll come out like that. Not uncommon to have a little bit of meat, but not very much. And then beans and squash would definitely round it out. They actually call it the Three Sisters. So corn, bean, and squash all goes in the same hole. So as the corn grows up, the squash and the bean will physically grow up the corn stalk.
Is with the education and with the schools coming in, is there an exodus? Are people not staying in the village?
Yes, there definitely is. People with an education generally will go to the city to try to make a better life for themselves. Some will go back, but most of them will not. It's funny because I actually consider it a bit of a microcosm to the Mexican or Latino immigration to the U.S. As people go for a better life up there, they might not find it, but they're so embarrassed that they don't want to go back and show that they have failed at making a success of themselves. Or then there are one or two, of course, who go back, who flaunt their money around, saying, oh, I've made it and we do so well there. And so the education from the people in the mountains definitely is a bit of a sticky point. Sometimes they want to do ceremonies, but the kids are in schools. They don't want to allow them to take them out of schools to do certain pilgrimages. but they're dealing with it. There is some people from the IMF. Brian McDougall is actually working on a Huichol scholarship, which is very exciting because, education is key. But educating them and hoping that they go back to share what they've learned with the community, I think, is definitely the end goal.
Right. How often do you go up and visit?
We get up there nowadays maybe once a year. It's become very difficult because the new highway actually killed the airport. And I really enjoyed flying in more than the 14 to 16 hour drive.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
And so the hour on the plane was, even though it was kind of scary sometimes, the drive was just an elongated way of scaring yourself. I do remember one time, though, when we took this Dutch film crew in there that was documenting this project we did with the Irish elk. This large, probably, 6'5" Dutch guy comes up to me and says in a cool accented voice, there's two kinds of pilots in this world. There's old pilots and there's cowboy pilots. But there's no old cowboy pilots. How's the pilot? And I would, of course, assured him, I've flown with this guy 100 times. It's great. Don't worry. We jump in the plane. There was a little mishap with the seatbelt. Got the door closed. Took off. And we're probably a mile up in the air. And all of a sudden, the door opens.
Woo.
It's unpressurized, the plane, so it wasn't an enormous deal except for the girl who happened to be sitting beside the door that's flapping open.
Yeah.
And so my friend, who of course asked about the pilot, and I are behind her, reaching over, trying to close the door. The pilot's trying himself. And so the plane's sort of veering to the right, because he's not really paying attention to it. And the two melon heads behind us are filming us.
Well, it'll look really good on the way down.
And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I want to show it on YouTube, I'm like, great.
Yeah, well, you don't want to miss anything good. Whenever there's a fight, nobody steps in to help. Out come the cameras, right?
Yeah,
it's the
we got the door closed, and believe it or not, that wasn't even it. When we got there, I should have known that there was a problem because the governor had called me. At that time, my friend Jacinto, his son Florencio, was the governor of the tribe, and he says, yeah, make sure you tell that pilot to land south to north, or north to south, sorry, even though we come from the south. And I'm trying to, okay, so we fly in, we do a once around the village, and there it is. They put a market in the middle of the airstrip. So we have to do a hard landing out of the tree line and brake. And we stopped 100 feet from the market, but that's still an open prop. Which is 100 feet closer than I'd ever want to be to it.
Wow.
Yeah, so the driving's now the way to go.
Yeah, evidently, yeah. How many people are in that village?
That village is probably anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500.
Okay. Give me some demographics, age-wise.
Definitely the majority would be probably in their early 20s. There are elders. I've seen elders that are 80 years old. I met a guy who they claimed was 107. They also told me that for 3 years in a row. So some of the elders, they don't know exactly how old they are. If a kid can make it past 5, they pretty much made it. It's in their tradition, they actually don't give them a fixed name until they're 5.
Really?
Yeah, because of birth mortality. Malnutrition is unfortunately a big issue there. Even our own sicknesses, there are things like chicken pox that they just don't have immunity to, like we do.
Yeah.
But the average, they're doing really well in their 20s and 30s. And if you can last to 50, 60, that's a pretty good life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, let's come down from the mountain. Let's come over here to Colectika Gallery. Tell us a little bit about what you have here and what you've created.
It's kind of funny because this house was owned by 3 people from Yalapa. And one of them was a friend of ours, Isabel Jordan. Isabel has a Huichol place, or had a Huichol place in Yalapa. And so when we saw this house, it was kind of overgrown and had a garden in it and different rooms. We kind of liked the idea of being able to showcase something we call the grand masters of folk art. You know, not just the knickknacks you would find in the market, but the pieces that would be more collectible by museums and collectors the world over. There is an enormous market for Mexican folk art outside of Mexico, but in Puerto Vallarta and other tourist towns, they really only showed sombreros and serapes. The better artists were shown mostly stateside. In fact, we've shown artists here like Jacobo and Maria Angeles from Oaxaca who had never shown in Mexico. Yet every year they would be invited to the International Folk Art Market in Santa Fe. So we wanted to showcase something of a better quality, but also to showcase how it's changed and evolved. I already mentioned, the roads, the infrastructure, the cellular technology is giving these guys the opportunity to see new things and utilize new materials, even though they're staying within the same traditions that their forefathers started.
Interesting. So, tell us about your inventory. What do you have? You've got paintings. You've got
we have
pottery. You've got all kinds of things.
We like to say from Chiapas to Chihuahua. We've got just about everything covered. There is textiles that the Mayans do in Chiapas. Mayan crosses from San Juan Chamula. The iron crosses, called Cruz Metalística from San Cristobal de las Casas, are some of the things that we like that the Mayans create in Chiapas. In Oaxaca, the Zapotecs make rugs from Teotitlan del Valle. And then on the other side of the valley, in San Martin, Tilcajete, they make the famous wood carvings we call alebrijes. A little bit further up towards the city center of Oaxaca itself is San Bartolo Coyotepec, where they make the black clay pottery. Santa Maria Tzompa was actually made famous by Rockefeller collecting from Teodora Blanca, the white pottery at Tzompa. Mexico City, of course, produces some of the best papier-mâché alebrijes. The wooden tradition came from the family in Arrasola, the Armando Jimenez, the Manuel Jimenez family actually started that. But the papier-mâché tradition, of course, comes from Pedro Linares. We've got a couple pieces that his grandson, Ricardo Linares, has done, as well as other artists that still maintain that papier-mâché monster tradition. And then in northern Mexico, of course, are the Tarahumara Indians who make baskets, wonderful drums. There are the Yaquis who still make the Pascola masks and things like that. Guerrero has the tiger masks that have become very popular over the years. So it's just a collection of traditions that we want you to look at and see how they've changed and evolved. And then there's some contemporary we've mixed in. There's stone carvings we have with Juan Luis Potosi, and then paintings by Ana Raga. It's interesting how this art world is all interconnected. My friends Jacobo Maria, their son Ricardo, used to go out with Ana Raga, which is how we met her in Oaxaca. They broke up, and she now goes out with Juan Potosi and live in San Miguel, and everyone knows everyone.
Everybody knows everybody.
Yes.
A little bit, sometimes a little too close.
And so, yeah, we've created something that we think showcases the best of Mexico. You know, people who come on vacation, we always thought that if you purchase something, it would reflect upon what you've done at that time, what you've accomplished. You know, you're here to celebrate an anniversary. Buy something so it reminds you of that particular trip or adventure or time of your life. There's some amazing contemporary art galleries here also, but we think something that's uniquely Mexican will remind you of being in Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah, excellent. You have different little showrooms around here. So each of those showrooms has the art from a different area? Is that how you've got it laid out?
Yeah, I have a terrible problem called OCD. I'm left-handed and a Virgo. And so every room is compartmentalized into something distinct. We have one we like to call Heaven and Hell. And that's where we put all of our Catrinas as well as our nativity scenes.
Ah, look at you.
Yeah.
All right. I like it. Juxtaposition.
Yes, we have the Huichol room, obviously, where we have that. The beaded pieces mostly and some yarn pieces. The front room is mostly the wood carvings from Oaxaca. Our friends Jacobo and Maria have actually epitomized what we like to call ancestral contemporary. Whereas they've taken their designs that they would paint on wood carvings and are now doing pictographs, paintings, with their traditional Zapotec symbols and the painting two-dimensional surfaces as they would their three-dimensional alebrijes. So we have them in the front room. Then there's the patio, which is a little bit more colonial. The Milagros. Everyone loves the hearts with all the little symbols on them, which you would go to pray in the church for better eyesight. If you wanted to have kids, maybe a pregnant woman, Milagro you would give to them. And then there's the garden here in the back, of course, where we like to hang out the rugs and stuff in season. And then one of my favorite less commercial rooms is actually in the back here, the museum room we have of Huichol pieces. The Huichol art is pretty, but we have to remind people every day that, that beaded rhinoceros, as pretty as it is, didn't bring the wind and make the rain fall and the corn grow. What they actually use in ceremony is a little bit distinct. And there's a story I always like to tell about how I learned about that distinction was being up in the mountains and watching my friend Juan, who was beating a big jaguar head. Jacinto, the elder shaman, had gone down by the river and was starting a little fire and had started chanting. And by the time we got down there, we were handed a little ball of corn dough and a small bowl to throw into the fire. And so I, being the first time I'd ever done that, wasn't really sure how it worked, but I turned to Juan and I said, I don't know, you tell me, but what about if you put that jaguar head in the fire? Would it rain more? Or how does this work? And he kind of scratched his head and he looked at me and he motioned for me to come a little closer. So as I leaned in, he says, I'm an Indian, not an idiot. And walks away. And that was sort of one of those moments that all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay. So they do treat it differently.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's take a little break from art and let's go out into Puerto Vallarta and let's talk about food. Because this is called the bonus round. This is one that my listeners always look forward to. They want to know what someone who lives here likes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you got a favorite breakfast spot you want to tell us about?
I'm not much of a very early riser. But if I had to, I would definitely, Freddy's Toucan is a staple. I used to live in the apartments across the street from it since like 95.
So you were 15, 20 pounds heavier at that point, right?
But yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And so that's definitely would be a staple. Like if someone were to come here and we had to go out for breakfast, that's probably the first place that I would take them to.
Okay. How about lunch?
Lunch, I really like, right behind us is the Marine Seafood. It's a local place. Very rarely do you see foreigners there. It's great local hangout, fabulous food, and just fun family.
What do you order when you go there?
Yesterday we had the marlin tostada, the manta ray machaca, and a fish ceviche tostada.
Dude's not shy. He'll eat anything. All right. How about you have a second one for lunch?
Being in Vallarta as long as I have, it has to be the seafood, and I got to taste someone who's fairly new to the scene. I have to say, has just nailed it. Is La Mara.
They're in Versailles?
Yeah. La Mara in Versailles, the The tuna with avocado is outstanding. I was just in Peru, supposedly the capital of ceviche. They've got it. It's good, but there's nothing like those guys.
Wow. All right. La Mara.
Yeah.
How about dinner?
Dinner, unbelievably, one of the best experiences I think you can ever have is Barcelona tapas. It's in the same neighborhood. The food is excellent. The view is spectacular. You cannot go wrong taking someone there and letting them just sit there and enjoy everything that Vallarta has to offer.
Right. You got a second?
Second one, a little bit more traditional, would definitely probably be the red cabbage.
Yeah. Excellent.
Chilies and nogada are excellent. Good food. Great people. Lola and her team have been there for so long. I think it's a testament to how good food and service that they have.
No doubt. Any hole in the walls that you normally just walk past, but you've actually, discovered and stick your head in and actually eat?
Not that far from here, just down from the famous Café des Artistes, maybe one block over, is a little place called Melissa's. Another seafood family-run joint. There's a new place here, actually, on Guadalupe Sanchez, just beside Pepe's, which is tacos and carne en su jugo. So we've got great hope that they become a little bit more popular.
Good. If you were going to leave town for a day and come back, where would you go?
Definitely to either, I would say, San Sebastian, Moscote area, if you wanted to cool off, or if you wanted more of the beach scene, Tehuamixle.
Nice. And you can do it in a day.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. That's, we get into these, I'd like to say, debates with people who used to be here in the 70s who lament how Vallarta's changed. And yes, it has. There's some Indians that sold Lower Manhattan and they're kind of upset too. Everything changes and evolves. But I look at Vallarta as just growing potentially. If you want virgin beaches like Vallarta had in the 70s, Maito, Tehuamixle. Today you can get up into the mountains in a day trip. And so it's fantastic. You can drive to Sayulita. One of my first experiences being here, I remember, was someone offered us beachfront property in La Cruz in 1995. Me and my friend looked at each other, and I think it was only 10 grand. We're like, I got enough for beer, and I got bus fare to get back, and this town smells like fish. Let's get out of here. I mean, it was a dirt road. It took an hour drive at that time. But now with the infrastructure, you can drive to Punta Ramita, Sayulita, walk up El Cerro de Mono. There's just so much more to do between the theaters, the restaurants. I just think Vallarta's getting better. Yes, it's not the sleepy little fishing village it once was, but there is another one down the road you can stay at for a night.
Exactly right. And everything is within 2 hours.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. How about a 3-day trip? Where would you go?
There's a few things around Guadalajara that are starting to become more interesting. It was not that long ago that they actually really reopened the new pyramid site of Huachimontones. So I think that's exciting. You can go downtown Guadalajara and see the sites there, as well as visiting the pyramids. On the way up there, obviously, you can stop in Nayarit at the sanctuary where the petroglyphs are. So it adds a little culture, I think, to the trip. That's something I would do. The most fun for me, though, is southern Mexico. By far and away, Oaxaca, Chiapas. Even if it is for 3-4 days, I think it's worth it just to go through the markets.
Nice. Just fly in.
Yeah, fly in, couple days. The food in Oaxaca is spectacular. And just to walk through the open-air markets to see how everything's produced. People come with a little blanket and whatever they grew that week. I mean, they might have 3 radishes, and that's it.
Do you have any hobbies?
Photography is something I've dabbled with. I'm still trying to keep everything in focus, but yeah.
Good one. How about word of advice for a first-time visitor?
Slow down. Slow down. Take it all in. Come with no expectations, maybe. It is a different way of life here. It works for them. and enjoy what's different about this. I think that our lives are too busy up there. People are working, and there sort of is a disconnect between them and the final product. And you really got to get off the train and smell the flowers once in a while. I remember, in fact, vividly, I was in a taxi and I had lost my keys or something, and I'm texting away, and the taxi driver turned around and yelled at me and said, "Hey, look, the sun's setting. Take time out, and just watch the sunset." Something miraculous like that happen. Because it happens here every single day.
That's right. Even when there's clouds.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Sometimes the clouds get better colors.
Yeah, exactly right. When you're cheering it on when the clouds are there. What's it going to look like today? Because it's always a gift. You just got back from the Amazon, didn't you? Or
yeah.
No?
I did a 2-week trek through the Manu biosphere in central Peru. We were with actually guys from Holland that were involved in the Deer Project. And we wanted to see what the Amazon was really like. And it was funny because for a couple of weeks before this trek, I walked my dogs around the mountain, and I was thinking, why am I going to the jungle when I live in the jungle? But I got to tell you, it was absolutely incredible. It took us about 3 days from Cusco. There was 1 day on a bus. 1 day was on the bus and the boat, and then another 8 hours by boat just to get it from the, it's called the Alta Madre de Dios River into the Manu River, into what they call the reserve zone of the Manu biosphere. And this is an area where they say, I think, only 1,500 people a year are let into. Everything had to be taken in, taken out. We had little cabins. They were wonderful. They had running water, but no electricity there. But to see the animals, the plants, the insects in their absolute native habitat was sensational.
Yeah, must have been. Would you, if someone else was going to go, would you have done anything differently?
Actually, the way that they had this planned was picture perfect. I really can't complain. The transfers, the last day had an 8-hour boat ride starting at 4:30 in the morning. We ended up at this place. We had a 1-hour taxi drive to another river, and then had to cross that river in a water taxi, and the bus was waiting for us. I mean, it was incredible. My only thing would have been a little bit more time with the Machigenga tribe. They have a lodge in the area that we were able to visit and get a couple things. The biology wasn't my specialty, but anthropology sort of is, so I would have liked to spend more time with them. But we were able to buy some crafts from them and meet them and learn a little bit about their culture. I just, because of who I am, could have spent all day there.
Yeah, exactly right.
Chasing giant sea or river otters is fun, but I would have spent more time with the natives.
Who did you use to help you organize that travel?
It was actually organized by this Dutch group, but they used a company called Pantacoya. Okay. Pantacoya has its own lodge in what they call the cultural zone, but they were the ones that organized. We went with 2 guides, a cook, and a driver.
Cool.
And there was 13 of us, and I cannot recommend them enough.
Excellent. Okay, well, I'll have links to that in the show notes, as well as links to everything here. Like you got Facebook and all that stuff. We'll talk about that in a minute. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we say goodbye today?
No, this is fun.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
All right, that's the way you feel about it. All right, tell us how people can locate you.
We have both Peyote people as well as Galeria Colectika. There's a Peyote people in the building called The Loft, which is on Carranza Ignacio Vallarta in the Zona Romantica. Our flagship store of Peyote people is 222 Juarez, right between the church, where the main square is, and the Mercado del Rio Cuale. And then Galeria Colectica is at Guadalupe Sanchez and Allende.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I'll have links to all those places. I'll have pictures, and I'll have maps that'll take you to the front door of all of those places. I took pictures here over at Colectika, including that great mural of Adrian Tacano in front there, and you can also find that at www.puertovallartatravelshow.com. And, well, Kevin, I just got to thank you so much for taking the time and sitting with me today and really opening our eyes to the Huichol culture and also to your wonderful stores. I really appreciate that.
No, thanks, Barry. Actually, there is one thing I'd like to add. Adrian's working on the other side of the wall, so if anyone wants to come by and see what Adrian's doing, he'll be working here just a couple hours in the morning. I don't want the poor kid to burn up in the daytime sun, so he's been working early in the morning on the Allende side of the gallery, so he's going to paint it.
Oh, cool. That's wonderful. Okay, well, send me pictures when you get it all done, and I'll post them on the Facebook page for the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show.
Definitely.
Kevin, thanks again, brother.
No, thank you, Barry.
All right. Can you imagine being Kevin, bringing home a Huichol, right? Hey, honey, guess who's coming to dinner? Talk about an adventure, right? This guy comes down to change the world. And then he goes and sells timeshares. And then he becomes a Huichol whisperer and a business owner. I mean, it just goes to show you that you just never know where the magic of this place, Puerto Vallarta, will take you. Do you? Anyway, like I said, I've got some great pictures of the insides and the outsides of Kevin's places, including maps and links and some beautiful pictures of some of these beautiful and fascinating Huichols. So remember to go to www.puertovallartatravelshow.com. Check out this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. You'll find all the pictures there. All right. Well, that should do it for this week. So stay tuned for more on-the-ground reports from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, with travel tips, great restaurant and excursion ideas, and more. But until then, remember, this is an interactive show where I depend on your questions and your suggestions about all things Puerto Vallarta. If you think of something that I should be talking about, then please reach out to me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending us your message. And remember, if you're considering booking any type of tour while you're in Puerto Vallarta, you must go to vallartainfo.com. That's JR's website. Reserve your tour through him, right from his website. Remember, this is a value-for-value proposition, my friends. His experience and on-the-ground knowledge of everything Puerto Vallarta in exchange for your making a purchase of a tour that you would do anyway. You're just doing it through him as a way of saying thank you. Thanks, JR, for being our guide. It costs no more than if you were going to use someone else, so do it, really. And when you do take one of those tours, email me about your experiences. Maybe you can come on board and share with others what you liked or didn't like about the tour. Again, contact me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending off a message. And don't forget, he's got his maps, his DIY tours, his revitalized happy hour board, and more. I have links to all of those in the show notes. And once again, if you like this podcast, please take the time and subscribe and give me a good review on iTunes if you would. That way we can get the word out to more and more people about the magic of this place, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And remember, I made it easy for you to do just that with each episode I create. But if you haven't been to my website, you really need to take a look there. Have links to places we talk about, interesting pictures, and more, all right there in my blog posts and in the show notes for each episode of the show. So check them out for sure if you haven't already. All right. So, again, thank you so much, Kevin Simpson from Peyote People, the Colectika Gallery in Puerto Vallarta. Thanks for introducing us to the Huichols, and thanks for that up-close and personal look into that mysterious group of human beings. I mean, I have pictures, some of these beautiful Huichols, like I said in the show notes, as well as links and pictures to all three of Kevin's places in the show notes. I'll make sure to stop in and see one of his places, or all of them, to discover the incredible art of the Huichols, and the Yaqui, and the Tarahumara, and the Cora Indian tribes. All of those guys use that special medicine, right? Peyote. Yep. And thanks to all of you for listening all the way through this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. This is Barry Kessler signing off with a wish for all of you to slow down, be calm, and Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Nos vemos. Adios.
De Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de amor junto al mar. Solo camino interno por la playa, me encuentro junto al río cuando todo está en calma. Pronto cae la noche, brillas Puerto Vallarta.